right now I'm so focused on the flow of the script. In order to get out of that, it had to become second nature. In order for it to become second nature, I just had to put in the work.
I think what's so admirable is that it almost sounds like you're doing more work in a day than a lot of agents right now do in a month. And I think, it goes to show the difference between work ethic and being lazy. And then so obviously you jumped in there with full work ethic. I mean, you were steaming through your nose, your ears, everything. You were a bull. You were ready to conquer, to attack. And, I'm curious is that obviously you jumped into real estate and you didn't know the lending side. There was a lot of foreign territory, if you will. It was almost like starting from ground zero, but you also still had the identity and basics, fundamentals, if you will, of door knocking and door to door sales. How quickly were you able to find success in real estate once jumping in?
Yeah, so my first month in real estate, I had 7 people under contract right out of the gate. And then right after that, it was like 5. I took almost a month off because I couldn't I couldn't handle everything. I had a mentor, I had like a TC, and I had a listing assistant. There was an office manager that I had a showing assistant. So I had a lot of that because I knew that that's what my mentor coached me on. I then picked up a coach right out of the gate because I knew that from door to door that there's a principle of don't reinvent the wheel. People have already figured it out. So go ask them. Usually those at the top want to tell you. People at the bottom just don't want to ask. It's more an ego pride thing. So I knew, like, getting right into real estate that, okay, I have the grind. I'm willing to out hustle anybody. And here's this realtor that was my mentor that was selling 200 homes a year. So I just latched onto him because I realized really fast that everybody else I was shadowing, they were very inconsistent, or they had prospecting methods that weren't, I couldn't duplicate. I couldn't replicate. That they had been in the industry for 20 years. So their COI database was huge. Well, I just moved here and I didn't know anybody in town. So I couldn't do that. But this guy was prospecting for 5 hours a day. He had a rock solid morning routine. He was practicing twice a day. He let me shadow him, record him. So I'm like, I'm definitely going to attach myself to him and just copy and paste. And so he got up at 4:15. I got up at 4:15. He had celery juice. I had celery juice, and I hated every second of it. He had a cold shower. I had a cold shower. He had a probiotic. I had a probiotic. He went to the gym at 5. I went to the gym at 5. He role played at 6:45. I role played. And then literally all day to a T, I replicated his entire schedule. And then when it was time to grind, I just outworked everybody. I mean, I put someone under contract, I think at like 11:45 p.m. at night. So it's the ability to copy and paste, don't reinvent the wheel. And then if you just work, you'll have the success right out of the gate.
No,
Or at least it increases your
obviously, yeah, that is true. You can't control everything. It is, for the most part, out of your control. You just have to do what you can do. You can only do so much. It's about their response, of course.
right.
Obviously, I mean, it sounds like you had way more success than most people. I mean, I guess besides Dwayne, I guess he beat you. But
He's like, now.
with that being said, I'm sure some of the challenges you have are actually maybe even what some realtors who've been in the business 5, 6 years are probably having. So in your first year, what kind of challenges did you have that were unique to your situation?
Yeah. So, I had a lot of success right out of the gate. I had 25 deals my first 6 months. I was rocking and rolling. Then on the 7th month, we found out that my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And we thought he was going to, pass away that January. And we had days left with him. And then he ended up passing away 9 months later in September. And so I would go down to Vegas and come back, and go down to Vegas and come back, and go down to Vegas and come back. And I literally was working every other month. And I still put in 50 deals to get 75 my first year. And I learned that in this industry, there are always going to be like these massive trials that either come from life, from business, from family or friends, or things that are thrown on your plate. But if the goal is big enough and you know why you're doing this job, then the how that gets so complicated sometimes will be really easy to figure out. Like that was really hard with my dad and really emotional. and I was spiraling through like depression left and right. But for me, I knew that when it was work time, that it was locked in, focus. I had a goal, I needed to hit it, but then I could be with family. And that all came from like weekly planning, habits of nightly planning, morning planning. I just kept the goal on a radar, and I knew if I was falling behind or moving forward. And I learned that from door to door sales. If I was behind on my goal, I went out early the next day. If I was ahead on my goal, I still went out the same time the next day to keep on pace. And so in real estate, I think a lot of realtors struggle with this, is that life happens and they don't have enough flexibility built into their schedule to like consume the life, internalize it, breathe, and then move forward. It like rocks them off their chair, and then they can't recover because they don't have like a nightly planning session, a morning planning session, or a weekly one to like readjust their focus. I always say, one of my mentors for like the longest time, his name's Jeff Mendez, and he always said that the bigger the why, the easier the how. Manage your systems, not your emotions. The emotions in this job are wild, and the emotions of life are wild. But if you have really good systems that you honor your word and you follow through with them, then those systems will always check yourself to make sure that you're on pace for whatever your goal is.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. That's inspiring. That really is. I mean, it just goes to show to double down on your mental adversity on top of your work ethic, man. I mean, what are you bad at? But regardless, I
Don't
know
ask my wife that.
what a lot of people, huh?
Don't ask my wife that.
Well, one thing I want to jump in and ask is I'm thinking, as agents are listening to this, right? I mean, it's inspiring, it's motivating, right? And I can already hear the things that like some of these agents who are potentially new are thinking, like, oh my God, he just like changed his whole life, like he just at the snap of a finger, it was just all different. It was all over. He just did everything somebody else did. And I'm sure in some way it felt that way, but I'm sure it really wasn't that way, right? It's always easier to see what's happening. We always think the grass is green on the other side, right? But that's just because they're watering it. At least that's what a mentor told me, right? It's only green on the other side because they're watering it. And so I guess my question for you is, there's a lot of growth through that. And I know that that's probably a story that could go on and on and on and on and on. But, for you, like, I mean, what was you've been doing this now for a while? When you first decided and those switches started taking place when you were doing first started door knocking, I mean, what was the process like? Was it instant, right? What did that look like? How many challenges were you going through? You said you were drinking what you said celery juice or and you hated every minute of it, right? But you did it. You took action. You went through it, and you were looking at the bigger picture, like you said. The goal, right? The why. So I guess I'm just curious for an agent that's jumping in going, oh my God, there's no way I can do all that, right? I mean, they've got to take action. They've got to do it at the end of the day. But I mean, what kind of words do you have for an agent who might feel like, holy crap, that seems like a lot, you know? All those big changes personally to get to where they want to be in business.
Yeah, that's a great question, Anthony. I would say that the idea that it's hard, that it's a lot, is totally valid. And you can't avoid that feeling or suppress it. You have to like sit there and think about that and let it process. It is a lot. It's very hard. 90% of realtors fail the first 2 years. And the realtors that make it, to me, they're the ones that are humble enough, that are willing to put their ego aside and realize that this isn't an industry that's been going on for 4 or 5 years. People have been doing this at a high level for years and years and years, and they'll continue to do it for years and years and years. So that almost brings a reassurance to me that I can enter this industry. I can find someone that has a replicable, like a process that I can duplicate, and then I just need to be humble enough to copy and paste. And that brings a lot of reassurance, because if that wasn't the case, then the anxiety and the overwhelming like beast that real estate is, honestly, would be too much. And I think more realtors would fall out. But you can easily now with technology say, hey, I want to go through YouTube, and that's going to be my bread and butter. I want to door knock. I want to